Okay, so if you're already here, let's create a new project and make sure you're in Visual Basic, the Windows Form application, and I'm gonna call mine just what chapter is it? Chapter 6. So chapter 6. This is the do while loop. Okay, or yeah, just put do while. Also covers the while, but we should call it do while. And here's my typical form. Let me just make that big, and I want to have my toolbox. Okay. I just want to center my form and the center screen position. And we'll use a list box to output data because that's easier, so we can see all the results here. Whereas if you use a text box or something, you only get one line. So you put list box here, and we'll output some data to this list box. Okay. I'll want to call this something like LST. Again, just output. I also want to change the font size. Make that. Usually use 20, so we can see. Let's add a button to the top, and I think we're just basically gonna display some data to the list here by using one of those loops. We'll call this just btn I don't know, maybe put like a loop or something, btn loop, and then the font will also be like 20, and the text, I just put loop it, right, or something like that. Okay, one thing that I did not or haven't showed you yet is it's called a form load, and this is one way to actually initialize your data. Okay, so I'll show you in a minute here, but for now let's just do the loop first. So this is all we have to do, and the loop, basically we're just going to loop through some numbers, and we'll display those numbers to the list box here. Okay, so I just double click on the button, loop it here, and that should create this subroutine called btn loop click, or however you want to call it here. Okay, so we want to, let's just say, display, I don't know, 10 numbers or something like that to the list box. Okay, remember that initially when you add data to the list right here, you can literally add the numbers or data here by going to the form and then click the arrow here and add items, and you put some numbers here and add to the list. This is the initialization part, right? In the code, you could also do that programmatically. So we'll do something like we'll add some numbers to the list box. The easiest one is just to add some numbers, because we can actually increment the numbers by something, by 1 or 2 or whatever it is. So the first thing is we want to prime. Okay, this is the initialization, or this is the prime read. Okay, so what are we trying to do here? So we're going to add something to the list box, and I'm going to store a value, a variable to store the counter. So you have a counter to do that. So we'll say dim, we'll just put the counter as integer, and we'll start at 0. So we'll count from 0 through 10, including 0, right? So it was 0 all the way through 10. So actually we have a total of 11 items to add. This is a really simple one. There's no accumulator, so we're not actually accumulating anything other than just incrementing or updating the counter here. So we're starting at 0, and then you want to do like you want to add to the list box. So we'll have our condition here. We use the while loop. So as soon as you type while, you are presented with two of them, the while and then the do while. Which one you want to use, right? So we use the while for now, and then if you hit enter, it's gonna, well, it doesn't let you add that, but you're gonna put the condition here. The condition is we're gonna count from 0 until the counter is greater than 11. Okay, so you can say while counter is less than 10, right? That, or you could also say while counter is less than or equal to, if you want to include, well, actually if you want to include 10, then you have to put equal 10. So let's do that. Equals 10. That's including 10. Or the other way would be like to remove that and then say greater equal or less than equal to no, less than 11, right? So either way will work. And the difference is just the operators here. We have the less than equal to inclusive. This is not inclusive. So it will stop at 11 when the counter reaches the number. The same thing here. When counter reaches 11, it's no longer true, so it will exit out the loop. So while that is true, then the first thing we want to do is we want to add that to the list. Okay, so we have the lst output dot items add. We want to add the counter. Okay, we add 0 to the list. After you do that, and assuming that's the only thing that you would do, then you want to update. Okay, so you have put here update counter. So you want to add 1 to it. So the shortcut is plus equal 1, right? This is the same as saying counter is equal to counter plus 1, just shorter. And this is not really as short, but if it's like in Java or other languages, you just say counter plus plus. Okay, that's equal, and this is in Java, right? Or Java or JavaScript or other languages. So it's much shorter. But Visual Basic doesn't give you this option here. So you would just say counter plus equal 1. And we're adding 1 to counter. So after this, line 11, counter will now be 1. And then we'll go back to line 6. It will test the condition. 1 less equal to 10. Yes, it will loop through that again and keep going down the list. So you update your counter usually near the end of that loop. Okay? So right before you reach the end while, you want to update your counter. If you have 1, just update 1. If you have 2 of them or 3 of them, make sure all those are updated. Any of those, if any of those is important to cause this while loop to exit or to stop, then you need to update your counter. Okay, so that's all we do here. We just basically display the data from 0 to 10 to the list box. So let's save this and click start to run. And so here we have the loop. Click on loop it. It should add from 0 to 10 to the list. Okay, so you can see there's 11 times. Okay, including the 10. It's at the bottom here, a little bit small to see it, but so there it is, how you would loop through that 10 times, 11 times in this case, display all those 10 data to the screen. Okay? So here we're just adding the counter. What if you want to include in an accumulator instead of just counting from 1 to 10 or 11 or 0 to 10? What if you want to add something to it, right? And then display the accumulator instead of the counter. So we could do something like we put like sum as integer, and we initialize that to 0. So this is our accumulator, right? Accumulator. And so I just want to put that here. So in this case, this is our counter. Okay? The counter accumulator. So instead of adding the counter to our list, we could now say if the condition is true, then we want the sum to be sum plus sum itself plus the counter, right? So initially 0, so it'll be 0 plus 0, which is 0. And then we'll add the sum, not the counter, but the sum to the list instead. Okay? And I'm just going to modify my form just a little bit so I can see all 10 numbers. Mine was a little bit too long. I'm going to do this so I have enough space to add show all those 10 numbers. Okay. And then the counter will still be the same because we only need to increment the counter to make sure that this loop gets exit out of that. So it will still run through this 11 times, adding 0 to the sum, and then after that add 1 to it, add 2 to it. And so you see the sum will be displayed each time you go through the loop here. So if you run out and click on loop, so here's the sum, right? So the initially was 0, 0, you get 0, and then we increment that by 1, and then we add 1 to 0, we get 1, and then next is 2, so 2 plus 1 is 3, and 3 plus, right, 3 is 6, 6 plus 4 is 10, plus 5 is 15, plus 6, 21, and so on. So you have this pattern here, all the way to 11. So 55 plus 10, 45 plus 10 is 55. 11, because 11 is now false, we don't run the loop anymore, we just exit out, so that's why you don't see the 11 plus 55. It would have been 66 if it is included, right? Any questions on this simple loop? Okay, good. So now, so this is the while. The do while is very similar. The do while is all you do is basically you change this do, this while here, add the do in front of it, do while, and then down here it will be changed to loop instead. Okay, so just those keywords are changed. The setup is exactly the same way. Okay, so the while and the do while is exactly the same. It's just that it has different keywords. Okay, so if you change to do while and then loop at the bottom, and if you run, you still get the same result. Okay, it should be exactly the same. So this is a post-test, a pre-test, because we test the condition at the top. This is the top of the loop, and this is the bottom of the loop. Okay, so the while and the do while, when we say a post-test or pre-test, have to make sure you know where the condition is. So if I ask you an exam, I give an example of a pre-test condition or pre-test loop, then this is how you would write your code. Okay, the condition is up here. So, and the pre-test here, again, it never guarantees that this code might run, right? This only run if the condition is true. What if initially I put the counter to be like 20? It happens to be like that, right? If it is 20 and this number could be maybe an input from the user, or we read that number from a database or some other file, and so if that's the case, then because you test that this condition is false already, and then so these statements are never run. It will just jump right here all the way down to line 16 and then ends there. So if you click now and run, you see there's nothing added, right? There's nothing because the loop is already false. Okay, so it's not guaranteed any iteration. We call it iteration or loop through the body of the loop. Okay. Um, Once again, I usually put my conditions inside a pair of parentheses. So if that's easier for you, do so. If not, you don't have to. But I always recommend that to my students because other languages requires it. Okay. Only Visual Basic doesn't require you to put the parentheses. But if you go to take Java or JavaScript or other classes, it's required to have a condition inside a parentheses. Okay. So always do that just to make sure you separate the condition out of your keywords here. Okay. Any questions on this simple loop here? Okay. Let's see. We'll do one more, and then we'll take a break. Okay. So the other let's see. Part I want to show you is initialization here. So here you can see that we initialize, okay, your data to be 0 and 20, or in this case we'll change it back to 0. Okay, so usually when you run your application, you initialize your data, right? So if you remember here, I mentioned that you can initialize your list box here to have some information, some data. So why don't we just kind of like modify this list just a little bit here. So I'm going to move this to the side over here. Okay, and I'm going to add another one here. So you can just drag, copy, and drag this over here on the left side. And we'll turn on the properties. We'll get this the first list box here. We'll give it a name. We'll call it list LST just data. Okay, LST data. And then instead of adding, what we did in the form here, adding one, whatever it is, we'll read from the loop, from the list box here, and then we'll maybe either multiply or update or add something to each item here, and then we'll add the results to the second list box. Okay, so we'll loop through this list box and add it to the other one. Okay, so this initial box here, maybe a little bit too big. Let me just do it. I don't know. So initially I want to populate this with some data. So we can do that manually in here by going to click the arrow here, edit items, and we'll just add some, maybe like 10 numbers in here. Okay, so just 10 random numbers. We could do like I don't know, 1, 2, 5, 7, 10, 12, 15, any number you want, that's fine, and 20. Is that 10? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, one more, and then 25. Okay, so we have those numbers there. So this is initialization, right? So we initialize this list box on the left to have those numbers, and then we'll add those numbers to the other side. Okay, so back in the loop, back in here. So the counter, we have to update this counter to be the total number of items on the list. And we say it has 10 items on the list, right? So I could say, since I already know it has 10 items, I could do that, right? And for now, we'll just do that first. And we're going to add the, we're just going to add the numbers from each of those to itself. So we add, like the first one is 1, so we'll add 1 to 1, and then 2 to whatever 2, and so on to the counter. So we'll count from 0 through 9, right? Because 0 base is 0 base. So in this case, counter will be no, I'm sorry, this will be 0 still. My mistake. We'll start from 0. And the counter will be not 10 but 9. So we can remove the equal sign and less than 10, okay, or if you put equal, then it will equal to 9. So you put less than 10 here. And the sum will be, we'll add in the sum of the counter. Let's see. Okay, let's do an easy one first. Okay, let's remove the sum here. Okay, well, basically you're going to read the item, right? One line at a time from here to the output here. Okay, so we're going to add not sum, but we'll do another variable here. I want to do it a simple way you can see it first. So we'll do another dim outside here. Dim num as integer for now. Okay, this num here will store the number from the list box. So we read at 0. And remember that the list box contains data from 0 all the way down to whatever the number is. So you want to know how many items are here. And we know there are 10, right? So 0 to 10, 0 through 9. Okay, so the first thing is the counter is 0. That's also the index for that item. And we can say that the first number on that list is be assigned the LST data. Okay, this is something new. So the item at that position. Okay, this says list data dot items counter. So initially this will be what? List data dot items 0, right? Because counter is 0. So the counter is 0. So the item at 0 position is going to be 1. Okay, we're going to grab the 0th position, which is the first item here, which is 1. Assign this 1 to a variable called num. And then we're going to add the num to the other list. So I'm basically copying what I have there from the list on the left to the list on the right. Okay, and this is how you retrieve data from a list box based on the position. We'll see if that's true, and then we're still going to increment our counter until it reaches 10. Once we reach that, then we're out of that loop. Okay, so let's save this and run and see if this is what it's going to give us. Basically, just going to copy one over to the other one and so on. Okay, so you can see that you get the exact same copy to the other list. I'm reading basically counter 0. So read from the first item here. This is 0 position, and then read that 0 position value which is 1. Add that to the num. You print the num, add the num to the second list box as the first item, and then you increment the counter to 1 now. So you move your counter point to number 2 here, and you grab that, assign it to num again, add that to the list, and you move to 3, which is number 5, and then all the way down the list until 9th position here, and then you add that, and then when the counter is 10, it's no longer true. We exit out the loop, we're done, and then we get a same copy of that data from one list to another. Okay, so this example here, last time I showed you was if you click on the list box, okay, if the select item, you can grab the value from there by using the select item. Okay, in this case we're not actually grabbing the select item, we're just grabbing everything from the list from 0 all the way down to the nth minus 1. Okay, it'll be 10 minus 1, so it's 9. So we add that to the list. And this is how you access those data here. Okay, you can access any item here using the index position. So you can use the index here. So list data dot items and then paren the counting number will be from 0 to whatever that is. You have to make sure that you know the numbers of items in there. If the counter is way beyond the total you have here, you have an error. Okay, you have an out of bound error. Because if you put, for example, instead of counter, if I put like a 12, right, which is not part of that, it only goes from 0 to 9. If I put 12 here, you see that you have an error. Okay, if I click log, you say there's no, it's out of bound, out of range exception. Okay, so you have to know the number of items on the list. Okay, and what if you don't? What if you don't know it's 10? What if that number of list is always changing? How do you get that number? So here I know because I counted 10. Okay, so you could do like here, you could do like dim max as integer, and to get the total number of items on the list, you would say lst data dot items dot count. Okay, and that will count that list item for you, and it will give you a number of 10, right? So then instead of 10, we put max here. So that list can change to whatever number. It doesn't really matter in this case. It will always work. Okay. Whereas the other one, I maxed it at 10 because I literally put a number there. It's a constant number, so that's always bad. Okay. Again, always put into a variable name and read the data dynamically. So in this case, if I shrink this list box to whatever how many numbers there are, this will always work. Okay. So as you can see, if I go back here and if I go back and add another number. If I add it like 30 and then 40 and then 50, right? I just added a few more numbers you don't see here, but it should still work because now I'm counting the total number of item in this list, and then just basically run through the entire list and then copy everything over. Whoops, in this case I put 12 because I literally put number 12 in there, right? Because I said 12. The 12 position, I put that in there, so it doesn't matter what's said here. It will still loop that many times, but each time it only puts 12 because 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12 is this number here. This is the 12th position, and then it adds that over. So to make it work like we had before, this would be your counter. Okay, so now you have the exact copy of data from one list to the other list. All right. Okay, let's take a break. We'll come back and then we'll do some more.